What is ethics? What is ethics? Like, genuinely. So many people have studied ethics and they've said this about this or that about it. What is ethics? So, from what I just think of it, ethics is the study of right and wrong. And when I took an ethics class at the University of Texas at Dallas, that's what I thought. And then I entered it. I got taught and I left the semester hating ethics for everything that I seemed that it was. And I'm going to explain to you why and really quickly. So if ethics is the philosophical study of right and wrong, it seems logical that people would come along and try to measure ethics. And one of the people who did, by the name of Bentham, was that he would measure rightness or wrongness by goodness and badness. And this goodness and badness could be perceived as something that's pleasurable versus something that's painful. And so he would go along to describe certain activities, certain actions, certain anything as the concept of whether it's pleasurable or whether it's painful. And so he'd measure it in this sense. And obviously, people would come along and say, oh, that seems so silly, that seems so shallow, versus, oh, that doesn't make sense in terms of all these certain questions. And they'd ask complicated questions that seem really difficult to answer. Like, for example, if a doctor had a medicine for a cure, but your wife had that disease and the doctor had it, but the doctor noticed that your need and put it very, very overpriced. And so what would you do? You didn't have the money to afford the medicine. Would you steal it? Would you let your wife die? And people would come along, give different scenarios, different answers. And the annoying thing is that these are real life scenarios where in real life there are genuinely difficult questions that people need to ask people need to ask themselves, or situations that people need to take action in, and there's just no good answer. So since measurement doesn't work, as shown in the class, as you can kind of imagine through common sense, how do you measure an ethical situation like that? How do you measure pleasure? There comes along logic, and then we have our famous guy Immanuel Kant, logicking his way through ethics. For example, if you ask the question, is it bad to lie? Is it bad to lie? Let me ask you, think about it. Is it bad to lie? Is it bad to tell you that I did something impressive yesterday? Is it bad to tell you that I actually got an A plus on an exam when I did not in reality? And so Kant goes on to say, yes, maybe he thinks lying was bad? Well, yeah, he did think lying was bad. But the reason ticked me off 6 months ago when I first heard it. And it was essentially because lying deprives the other agent the ability to look at reality from a logical sense in the same plane as the person telling the lie. It essentially means that when you don't tell the truth, you deprive the other person of making a rational decision based off that truth, because you've told them an untruth, and whatever reaction they make to that untruth is not valid because it's not the truth. Logically, sure, but in my head, my head, when I first heard that, I was annoyed, because the way I saw it, lying was wrong because the Bible said it's wrong. It's so obvious, it's a sin. Lying is straight up a sin. But yet, philosophers will come in and logic it. We go along through the semester studying Kant, and we come to the law of universality, which essentially says that no one should do anything that, if done over and over and by everyone, will cause a negative effect. And then we go back to measurement of goodness and badness through negative effects. And obviously, a negative effect can be seen differently by different people. Like, killing of a baby is obviously a negative effect, but if the baby was still in the womb, that seemed like a positive effect for other people if the net gain of that baby dying is that the life of the mother will be able to be lived more fully. So obviously ethics is very frustrating. So we continue. To the end of semester, we study moral luck. We study philosophies of other cultures like Confucianism. Confucianism is kind of based, by the way. And we end the semester with a lot of questions, moral questions, ethical questions that remain unanswered by someone who has given a satisfying answer that seems to achieve all of the wants and desires of everyone in the class and the professor. And then we have a bunch of concepts and a bunch of frameworks that we try to smush into these questions, but with no avail. And after 16 weeks of class, we ended the final lecture by her essentially stating that ethics is none other than simply a amalgamation of theories that we must use in our everyday lives to make a decision. And when that class ended, I was fuming. Leaving that door, my mouth was silent, just mad. Because the answer, as I said before, was so clear for me that we have the Bible to guide us through everyday life. But now when I think about it, that approach, that thinking was quite naive. And yes, the Bible is our framework to life, it is our foundation. But there's something more important going on here that I wasn't able to pick up when I first took that class. And that is simply that ethics is cringe. And I knew that ethics was cringe before, but now there is a new layer to the cringe of ethics. And the cringe of ethics lies in this idea called the nomos. The nomos comes and becomes the word the norm. Oh yeah, the norm. The current culture creates a norm for everyone to follow. I can't escape the norm, you know? Yesterday I was wearing what is considered trendy fashion to school. I can't escape the norm, and you can't either. Everyone is affected by the pills, the stories that society feeds us. And whether we're aware of it or not, there is some of the matrix that's inevitably going to shape the decisions we make, the lives that we live. Because of the nomos, people are always going to be affected somehow by our culture, and that's just something we simply cannot escape. And the entire field of ethics, especially if you're looking at it from a standpoint where people are determining to do the right thing, it really is just social engineering. It's whatever answer you choose for any particular question. It's really just the result of your experiences, your beliefs, the stories you were told, and the stories that you were told are meant to be good. Perhaps those of your parents, those that were fed to you by school, those that would deem you upright or respected amongst your classmates or peers or whoever else you look up to. This is what ethics is for humans, especially anywhere. Anywhere you really ask, you ask someone, should I abort this baby? Well, it's a question of who's asking and who's listening. And so we are left with a very cringe field of ethics, which reminds me a lot of psychology, where politics are involved. But now, at the end of the semester, when I was looking back on my study on ethics, I hated it so much. I hated the fact that people were using any magical whim to come up with the right answer. And now I see it's just people trying to determine for themselves to see what's right. But the realization that I've had recently is so small. It's so small, but it's so big. It's massive. And this comes from Heidegger's work, Being in Time, and the concept of dasein. What do we do when we're faced with an impossible challenge? Dasein. What do we do when there is something so difficult, so unfair, so insane to make a decision on, but we have to do it. We simply be. We be who we are. We be genuine. We stick to who we inherently are, not necessarily what we believe, not necessarily what we think is right, but we simply be. And it is very rare to see a human who will take on this challenge of just being. Because it's a responsibility that ultimately falls upon anyone who touches and walks this earth. The responsibility to simply be. Because a thing, like this notebook, this thing is thinking. This thing is being. And it ultimately fulfills the purpose that this notebook has in the universe, which is simply to be. And to exist is, for one thing, is to say one thing, but do we really know what it means to exist? To be, yes, we are like creations of God, but existing, what does that mean? Because we know that heaven exists, so to speak. We know that it is a real place, so to speak. But what is existing? What is existence compared to such magical, mystical places that we know so little about in terms of physical reality? And thus, the essential understanding to be, which is what every human is called to do, is what we are meant to do when it comes to ethics as well. To just do, to just be. And I think this kind of reminds me of something in business, because when you're making a business decision, you can't wait for executives to verify an authorized decision from level to level to level. It's my church where I used to work at, there used to be so many levels of authority which approval would have had to go through just to hire someone is ridiculous. Things like that are very slow, and yes, it's secure, but in business, when you have competitors in the market, you need to move quick. And if you are an executive, they've hired you as an executive to make decisions for the higher ups. You as a leader have to lead your team into decisions. And even when you don't know what the right answer is, you still need to make some decision, because it falls on you to move the company forward, to move forward. And the idea of being, which honestly doesn't relate much to business, I do see a connection there in the sense that you just do. You simply do. And it doesn't really matter. It doesn't quite frankly matter what is right or wrong, because in our hearts, in our genuine heart of hearts, we already understand what it means. We have a sense of justice, right? So if we feel that if someone has done something that cannot go without justice, we have that feeling of, this was not right, not in God's eyes, not in my eyes. And even we have that sense of justice for ourselves, which can sometimes be so high. But that inherent sense of right and wrong is what I truly believe is inside us. And when philosophers come in and ask these insane questions like the trolley problem, does these questions truly matter to our existence? Because everyone's values, it just goes into this whole class of philosophy that I took back in that class, which I just hated, because what's the point? What is the honest dang point? If you're a human, your responsibility is to be. If you're a Christian, your responsibility is to reflect God in all you do. And this brings me to my final point, which is, when it does come to making a decision, when it does come to ethics, reflect someone whom you respect. And this is a part of a reason why I believe the Bible has stories, because we are given heroes to look up to. Not only Jesus, but also people, humans who have made mistakes like us, and yet are highly regarded amongst the ranks of heaven as heroes. And these are people, we can analyze their mistakes, we can look at their victories and think, I can be like them. And so, when in a face of a situation, we can truly look up to people of the Bible, people in our lives, people who we look up to and feel a genuine spark of inspiration. We can be like them in that situation. And the net balance, the universal cost of any decision, it doesn't matter. We learn from our mistakes, yes. We experience sufferings and wins, yes. But at the end of the day, whatever you do, you fulfill your purpose of being. And that's a win. And so with that, I still hate ethics as a field, but I've come to a resolution with myself on how I view ethics, and I'm happy about that. So I made a video on that. Oh my gosh, bro, these YouTube videos are getting ridiculous because I spend time studying, I spend time with my family. It gets insane. My energy levels are so low, it's ridiculous. I'm losing time for the gym. It's crazy. I might edit this out of the video. I don't know. But I hope you liked the setup. If you did, let me know what your favorite LED lights are. And if you have made it this far in the video, that's really exciting because wow, you really care about the channel, which is honestly really cool. So if you could leave a like and subscribe, that would mean the world to me. And ethics. Most ethics professors are women, bro. Just think about that for a minute.